All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I would like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we're in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu Cree, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation and Treaty 3 territory. My name is Neil Harden. I'm chairing today's panel. With me are Idila Daloro and Michelle Duncan. The secretary today is Crystal Harland, and the assessor is Stephen Lobenstein. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rule in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application and will limit discussion to those matters. Statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking on matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it and the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value reclassification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions the applicant may have, and the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You'll receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing items 1 through 12 on our docket today. Ms. Harlan, please affirm the assessor's and applicant's testimony.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Mr. Assessor, would you please state your full name?
Stephen Lobenstein.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, would you please state your full name?
Howard Lindsay McCubbin.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
All right, so the first property on the agenda today is 1856 DeVries Avenue. So Mr. Lobenstein, you can begin on this one.
Okay. Here. Okay, so the roll number is 040031720000, 1856 DeVries Avenue. We have the roll year of 2025 and the reference date of April 1st, 2023. We have applied an assessed value of $806,000. We have an effective year built of 2008. Wall height at 15 feet. Construction class is wood or steel framed exterior, and the zoning is M1 for light manufacturing. We have a land area of 16,742 square feet, and a leasable area 3,375 square feet for land to plan of 4.96. Moving down to my page 3, you can see where it's located near La Jamodier on DeVries Avenue. And then we just have some exterior pictures of the property. You can see it's a sort of a triangle shaped property. That's good land to building ratio, as I mentioned above. You can see the exterior from the front. Looks like the offices are in the front with all the glass there. Moving to my page 5, you can see that it did trade in 2010 for $507,000. It currently has a rent in place of $12 per square foot. So it's a 3-month lease, started in 2020. Moving on to my page 6, you can see these are the rent comparables that we have. These are actually market rent comparables. These are net rent. Net rents in the market, so they're devoid of all expenses. This is what we'd use to build our model. So we're seeing on Century, 2 on Dobie, and 1921 McLeod. For this type of property, you're not going to get a lot in the area, as we can see from the shot above. There's not a lot of industrial in this area, so you have to spread out across the city, which we did here for our rent comparables. Moving down to my page 7, you can see the model income workup. So we're applying the leased area, 3,375 square feet. We're applying a rent of $12.44 a square foot, which is very close to the actual rent of $12. We have a potential rent of $41,985. In this area of the city, we're applying a 1.5% vacancy rate. We are also applying our 3% expenses and a $4 shortfall. This gives us a net operating income of $39,911. We have a capitalization rate of 4.95%. We're applying to the net operating income to generate an assessed value of $806,000 rounded. So we'll move down to my page 9. You can see the capitalization rate chart. The industrial is second from the top. We don't differentiate between single tenant A or multi-tenant B or industrial A and B. We just have our 20th to the 80th percentile. So the majority of industrial model properties fall between the 5.35% and the 7.3%. This particular property does not at 4.95%. And that would be due to its size. It's a much smaller property, and also due to its age at 2008. There's a lot lower risk on this property than there would be on an older property or a larger property. So that's why you're seeing a lower cap rate that's outside of the 80th to the 20th to the 80th percentile. And moving further down, you can see on my page 11, they are compliant. They did supply their mailer. The mailer shows a net operating income of $31,554. And of course, they do show the tenant paying the $12 rent on page 13. That being said, it was brought to my attention that this property does not have services. There is no water or sewer. I looked that up. That is true. So other than that, I mean, even without the water or the sewer, they still are achieving a $12 rent for this property. So that being said, I feel this property at $806,000 for assessed value is fair and equitable and should be confirmed. Thank you.
All right, questions, Mr. McCubbin?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I think my questions were answered in the assessor's presentation of how this value was gotten and the rationale for it. So I'm good, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Del Oro.
I have no questions for the assessor, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Duncan.
There aren't any city bylaws or laws, I should say, that require sewer and water in a business, in an operation, warehouse or not.
Well, I mean, they would have, they probably have a septic field or a well. So that would be, it's not, I don't believe they're going without services. They just have a different type of service.
Okay, thank you. No other questions.
All right. Would the lack of city services increase the risk on the property?
Again, I guess slightly. You don't have the city services, but again, they would have water going there, I would presume. I'm not 100% sure. I'm sure Mr. McCubbin can answer that. And again, they would have probably a septic tank, and they would get pumped out, would be my assumption.
Yeah. All right. Okay, Mr. McCubbin, you can begin your presentation then.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just give me a moment, please. Okay. 1856 Debris Avenue, Realty Roll number 04-003172,000. File number is 24-2790. Current assessed value, as Mr. Lobenstein said, is $806,000. He's confirming that. We're requesting an assessment of $433,000. With respect to the property and its description, If you can go to page 6 of my brief, please. It's essentially the same kind of photographs that the assessor put forward. So you'll see the triangular shape, sort of, well, it's not totally triangular shape. The top of the triangle is lopped off. And the building down below and its relative location in the city. Pardon me. Okay, so I'm at page 8 now. The subject property located at 1856 DeVries Avenue in the city of Winnipeg is located on the west side of DeVries Avenue between McIver Avenue to the north and Sun Valley Drive to the south. The property is best described as an industrial warehouse building constructed in 2007 with a wall height of 15 feet. The property is not serviced with potable water or sanitary sewer, which is a very significant negative influence on the property. Furthermore, the irregular site configuration results in limited parking. The subject site has a total site size, as recorded by the Assessment and Taxation Department, of approximately 16,742 square feet, but in its industrially zoned. The land to building ratio is 4.96 to 1. And the highest and best use, of course, is as it exists in its current use. If I can take you to if I can take you to page 12, please, of my presentation. And top heading is the income approach. We agree with all aspects of the income summary, with the exception of the capitalization rate applied by the city. And you can see down below, I'm sure you've seen those sales before in your past hearings. This is the sales we put forward for industrial properties with respect to calculation of capitalization rates, and they range anywhere, the cap rates range anywhere from a low of 6.57 to a high of 9.01%. So based on the above, the average April 2023 compression and capitalization rate for Class A industrial should be between 25 basis points on the higher quality assets. Just move on from there. Okay. So there's site-specific on page 13 now. So of course, there's site-specific factors that affect the capitalization rate when you're looking at a specific property, obviously. And it's listed on page 13. And those adjustments, the factors influence the cap rate are as follows. And you can see it. Configuration is one factor, configuration of the land. Building age and condition, not so much. Topography can be considered as a configuration situation too. Site size is okay. But essentially adjusting for the lack of sewer and water to this property, Mr. Chairman, and the issues with respect to lack of parking, not the lack of parking, but the reduced parking for this type of an operation. We are reporting a cap rate of 8.5%, which is considerably higher than the assessor's cap rate, and we feel that cap rate is representative of the current situation of the property with respect to the negativities that I've discussed. So applying that, just let me back up here, Mr. Chairman, please. The NOI used by the assessor was 39,911, and my net operating income is less, so we didn't accept the rent. We lowered the rent. We went right to the actual paid rent on the property, Mr. Chairman. We didn't go higher. So we lowered the rent to what the tenant is paying. And we applied a vacancy rate of 1.5%, shortfall of 650. That 5 shouldn't be in there. I'm going to have to do a calculation here, Mr. Chairman. If you can just bear with me, please. I'll do it on the fly. We don't have to break. Because I can see that, let me back here. Be with you right away. I'm gonna use the, instead of my net operating income, I will use the assessor's net operating income because I put 5%. And nevertheless, I will use the assessor's net operating income 39,911 and apply our cap rate of 8.5 to that. So let me just do that quick calculation here.
Comes to $470,000.
And so applying the assessor's NOI and our cap rate, the value is $470,000. It's increasing from my 332, or sorry, 333 rounded as in my report. So it's changed to 470, and by those inputs. And in my appendix, you can see some more photographs in the appendix, some window photographs. You can see a different bird's eye view of the subject property. And finally, that's it. And that's my presentation, Jim.
Okay,
questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Robinson, any questions?
Just one question on the cap rate. So I'm just trying to understand. So you adjusted the cap rate upwards just because of the water and sewer, or did you take into account the small building area and the age of the property as well?
Yes, I did. We did recognize the age of the property and the small square footage of the building, and in recognition of an appropriate capitalization rate, we also took into consideration the parking situation with this property because of the configuration of the lot, and also the lot's configuration too, because you really can't do anything else with this lot. I can't see building in addition to the building here or anything. So, and of course, the lack of sewer and water. We think an appropriate cap rate. And for those reasons, we think an appropriate cap rate of 8.5.
Okay, those are all my questions. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Duncan.
Yeah, how many parking stalls do you think would be required for this type of use?
I would have to go to the zoning and dig that up, Mr. Chairman. But what I can say in general, I don't have to answer you. I don't have a specific number right now. I can get that. It would take some time. There is a number, but nevertheless, there is a lack of parking when considering a similar property and similar size property, type industrial property. This has reduced parking capacity.
Yeah, I'm just
because of the configuration, not necessarily because of the land to building ratio.
Yeah, I'm just looking at your page 6, and you can see one singular vehicle parked to the right of that bottom picture, but there seems to be lots of room there to the right of that. And being that it's a warehouse and not retail, I don't know that would not be considered adequate parking. That's why I was wondering what your thoughts were.
Okay, and again, yes, it is adequate parking. They can make it adequate for them, I guess. They're occupying the building and they're making it work for them. But considering all the similar properties and similar size properties, they have, I do believe, reduced parking capacity here.
Okay, and then my other question is, would you have any interior photos? I guess there's not an evidence, but have you been inside? Like, what's the condition of the building like inside?
I suspect the building is in average condition for its age. I don't think there are any issues with the building itself. So
So it's okay quality inside as far as you're aware.
yes, as far as I'm aware, there were no issues with the building itself. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. No other questions.
Hey, Ms. Delarue?
Yes, I have a question. The sale in 2010 was for 570,000.
Correct.
And you've indicated that as far as you're aware, it's still in average condition. So can you sort of just explain the, I guess, depreciation in your valuing of 470 now?
Right. I can only I don't Mr. Chairman, I did not investigate that sale. It was so far out of line, but my suspicions is that an owner adjacent to this property owns that property and wanted to purchase it. Uh, but again, that's one sale price, and it took place uh, 13 years ago. With respect to the current value year that we're basing valuation on today. So to answer, I didn't investigate that sale, but I would suspect the owner wanted to have that property, so they paid what they thought was reasonable at that time. But doing it by the income approach to value, and this is the approach we take on these properties. It, that is the result we're getting, and it's not in my reasoning. It doesn't seem to be very far off from what it should be. If you were to put this property in a normal location, of course, the capitalization rate would go down, depending on the area it's in. But the rent is the rent. It's I'm accepting the assessor's inputs with respect to the rents. They're slightly higher than what the paid rent is today, and I'm just adjusting the capitalization rate to come to a reasonable number with respect to how we deal with properties like this. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, would the lack of city provided sewer and water restrict the future ownership potential of this property?
I would suspect it would, because generally in an industrial setting, this is unique. You don't A property like this doesn't come on the market very often. Generally, their sewer and water is available. The configuration is different and whatnot. So I don't know if I answered your question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Do you know how far along the sewer and water lines extend to, or is it, well, I guess how close are the sewer and water lines should they ever decide to bring in city sewer and water?
That's something that we can find out. I haven't. There's a mapping system we can go to city on ground infrastructure. I don't know that. I'm just going based on its current circumstance. I don't know what that or if it ever will happen. I suspect, looking at this property, it'll stay like this and for the next few years anyway. And to answer your question, Mr. Chairman, no, I don't know how far away it is. Maybe the assessor can answer that, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. All right. I don't know if anything hinges on it. Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, I have one more question.
Sure.
So, I know in the city's evidence they had the I&E. I don't see it in your evidence, but when I looked at the I&E, the income seemed to be pretty consistent as far as the rental income, but their expenses were significantly high. Did you take any analysis of their I&E and their expenses and for that type of operation determine if it was they were high or you thought they were bang on?
No, I think the expenses were high, so I just went with we just went with the actual net rent
That's
paid to the property owner, and I accepted the city's other inputs with respect to the income approach value. But yes, the expenses are high, and for all intents and purposes, here today we're ignoring those expenses and going with the traditional income.
right.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I had a brain
No, no.
for I had some questions written down earlier, and that was one of them. And then you went with the city's NOI, so that was probably been a relevant question. But thank you for the answer.
Okay, sure. Well,
Okay, I wonder if perhaps part of the reason for the higher expenses would be the need to pump the septic tank every now and then and need to at least partially treat the water.
yeah,
I don't know if
yes.
they treat it potable standard or they whatever they have for
They're not treating it to potable standards as far as I know, Mr. Chairman. They have drinking water that's brought in for the
yeah.
office, and then the other water is used for own purposes like the washroom situation.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for that. We'll move then to second property, 50 Archibald. And I understand there's a non-cooperation requested on this, so Mr. Robinson, if you can lead us through the basic data and then into the non-cooperation.
Excuse me. The roll number is 0605149500. The address is 50 Archibald Street. We have assessed value of $818,000. So as we just spoke about, there's a recommendation for non-cooperative co-op. You can see on my page 3, if you scroll down to there, that we have the tracking number that ends in 760CA. You can see the times of the delivery, and the signature is available. It states at 10:59. So then as we roll down to my page 4, you can see the signature with the name G. Tate, and the signature is placed there. And further down, we have the letter that is sent out with it. Again, that corresponds with the tracking number, the 760CA. And further down on my page 6, you can see the blank mailer that gets sent out to this address at 50 Archibald, which matches the roll number I stated above. You can see the due date is June 30th, 2023. So this would have been the second mailer we sent out. This was the registered mailer. We do send one out through regular mail before this as well. So we feel that this satisfies the non-compliance and that it should be a reversal of onus. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. McCubbin?
I have no questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Ms. Duncan?
No questions. Thank you.
Ms. Delaro?
I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. McCubbin on the non-co-op then.
Mr. Chairman, as far as I can see, all the documents are in order. And in regard, I will let you make your decision, and when we reconvene, I will make my position known. Thank you.
Okay, we will then take a break while the board considers the request for non-cooperation. Okay, thank you very much. Welcome back. We've considered the evidence and we are going to grant the non-co-op on this property. So Mr. McCubbin, do you wish to proceed with the hearing on this property? You're muted there.
No, Mr. Chairman, I will ask for confirmation on the assessed value of this property. Thank you.
Okay, confirmation requested.
Yeah.
Okay, Thank you. That saves us having to deal with the issue of late evidence. Okay, we will move on to 400 Chrisland. Oh, this is the one with the late evidence. Okay, 400 Chrisland. So Mr. Lobenstein, you can begin on that one. You're muted.
Gonna happen a few times today, so.
Mhm.
All right. The roll number is 09010263500400 Chrisland Street. We have an assessed value of $886,000. I do have a verbal recommendation for $775,000. That's 775000. So I'll leave it to Mr. McHubbin if he will accept that.
And that's based on reduced rent?
That's correct.
Okay. Mr. McCubbin, how do you feel about that?
I do accept the offer, thank you. I do accept the offer with, of course, the owner having the last word with respect to acceptance.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
yeah.
Any questions from the panel on the recommendation?
No question.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll go on to 601 Washington. So on 601 Washington, Mr. Lobenstein.
Yep. The roll number is 02040610600601 601 Washington Avenue. We have an assessed value of $954,000. Again, I have a verbal recommendation that is for $856,000, so 856,000. Again, based on changing the rental rate.
Okay, and Mr. McCubbin, how do you feel about that one?
We will accept that offer, Mr. Chairman, with of course the owner having the last word with respect to acceptance.
Okay,
Once I report.
thank you. Any questions from the panel?
No questions. Thank you.
I have no questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Let me open a few more files here then. It was just 4 we did. We'll go. Okay, so we will move on to 337 Archibald. So Mr. Lobenstein on 337 Archibald.
Yeah, just give me 1 second here. Just gotta double check something. About that. Okay, so the roll number is 06051144000337 Archibald Street. We have assessed value of $978,000. I have another verbal recommendation for $873,000. 873,000, and that is also based on changing the rental rate.
Okay, and Mr. McCubbin?
We accept that offer, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you very much. Then we'll do any questions from the panel on this one?
No questions, thank you.
And no questions for me either, thank you.
Okay. 357 Archibald then. Going faster than I can write. Okay, on 357 Archibald.
Sure. The roll number is 0605115000, 357 Archibald Street. We have an assessed value of $980,000. I do have a verbal recommendation for $911,000. That's 911000, and that is that was calculated by a change in the rental rate.
Okay, Mr. McCubbin, how do you feel about that?
Just give me a moment, please, Mr. Chairman. Just look at this is 337, correct? Archibald?
357.
357, sorry. I do accept that recommendation, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Now I understand on the two properties on Madison will have to have hearings on.
That's correct.
So let's take a 10-minute break here till 10 to 10, and then we'll come back and do these two properties. There's going to be some preliminary issues we have to deal with on them as well. So we'll come back at 9:50. All right, thank you. Our next property is 489 Madison. So Mr. Robinson, if you can read in the basic information, and then we will have a preliminary issue we have to deal with. So on the basic information, Mr. Robinson.
Okay, the roll number is 07001118500499 Madison Street. We have an assessed value of $793,000.
On 489 Madison?
Oh, I had 499 Madison. Sorry. Myself. We'll try this again. My mistake. So for 489 Madison Street, we have a roll number of 070011222500, and we have an assessed value of $857,000.
Okay, thank you. Now, I'm told that the applicant's evidence was presented late. We don't know what that means. Ms. Harlan, do you know how late the evidence was presented?
Mr. Chair, it wasn't that late. It was sent a couple of hours or maybe even an hour after.
So
I
it
think
was the
it was-
day of the deadline, just after the close of business?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Lopnestein, does the city have any objection to receiving the information?
I have no objection to that. No.
Okay, Mr. McCubbin, do you have anything to say on the late submission? You're muted. You're muted, Mr. McCubbin. There you go.
Sorry, thank you. With respect to the submission deadline for this specific property, I was having computer issues at the time, and I let the board know that the other briefs will be coming once I get up and running. I had submitted previous briefs and had problems submitting the remainder of the briefs. But they were submitted soon thereafter once I had the problem sorted out. So I can't remember, but an hour or two after, and that's the situation with respect to that.
Okay. Are there any questions, Ms. Duncan, that you have on
No.
this?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Delaro?
I have no questions, thank you.
Okay, we'll take a brief break while the panel considers whether to receive the late evidence or not. Okay, thank you very much. The board has considered the late evidence and we are prepared to admit it into evidence. So on the value, Mr. Lobenstein, you can proceed.
Okay. So as mentioned, the assessed value is $857,000. Moving down to property descriptions. We have one building, there's 3 premises. The effective year built is 1962 and it has a wall height of 15 feet. The construction class is wood or steel framed exterior walls, and we have a M1 light manufacturing for zoning. We have a land area of 14,593 square feet and a leasable area 7,324 square feet for a land to plan of 1.9. Moving on to my page 3, you can see where the property is located on Madison Street. It's near Century, St. Matthews, and St. James. So it's in St. James area, not too far from Polo Park. Again, you can see on my page 3 an overhead shot of the property. You can see how the frontage is in the street. They have a back lane for accessing the rear, and they have parking on the side with access from the side as well. Again, on the overhead shot, you can see on my page 4, and there is a Google Street View as mentioned in the title there from July of 2017. So you can see the exterior of the building and the access to the premises in the property. And the rear view on the top there, you can see the overhead doors where they can back trucks in and out, or in this situation, you use it for parking. We're going to move on to my page 6 now. You can see the rental comparables. So these are net rents that are in the market. We're seeing the lease starts ranging from 2020 all the way up to 2022, so they're fairly recent. The lease terms are at market, ranging from 2 years to 5 years, which is pretty typical for this type of property. Leased areas are very similar to the subject property, ranging from 2,000 all the way up to 3,519 square feet. Wall heights range from as low as 12 feet to 20 feet, so it's fairly similar to the subject property. And same with the year built, so we have as low as 1958 and all the way up to 1988. And then you can see the net rents of these properties ranging from $9 a square foot all the way up to $13 a square foot. It should be mentioned as well that we see the addresses on the far left-hand side, and Wellington, Barrie, Weston, and Century are all fairly close to the subject property. Cree Crescent's quite a bit further out, but nonetheless, it is a similar size to the subject property and wall height. So we feel these are very good comparables for our model rents, which we'll see on page 7. So these are our model rents. We've broken them up into 3 premises that are similar to how the building is broken up. We're putting net rents on them ranging from, or model rents on them ranging from $8.18 and to $8.16 a square foot. This gives us a potential rent of $59,812. We have a 9% vacancy on this property. So they've obviously had some chronic vacancy, and we've looked at that. We have expenses of 3%. Net operating income comes out to $50,159. We're applying a capitalization rate of 5.85 to get our assessed value of $857,000. So as we move down to our capitalization rate chart, you can see the industrial is second from the top, and it falls within the 20th to the 80th percentile. It's on the lower side of the 20th percentile, just due to the size of this property. It's quite small when it carries much risk. And also the location, the St. James area is a pretty good location for having a business in the city. And as we move further down, we can see on page 11 that at the mailer, they indicate that this is a gross income. So it's not a net income. So we would not rely on the actual rent of this property. They show the expenses. And they do show an NOI of $36,198. But again, this is a gross income, so there are no recoveries. And then if you look further to the left or to the right-hand column, you can see the average space of vacancy is 33%. So I feel at our 9% vacancy, we have taken this into account. And further down, you can see on page 13, the rent roll. They do have one vacant one, as we spoke about, and 2 premises are occupied at the moment for gross rents. So we feel the value of $857,000 is fair and equitable and should be confirmed. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. McCubbin? You're muted again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just have one question, Mr. Chairman, with respect to the land to building ratio, Mr. Labenstein. Would you say that this is this land to building ratio is sufficient for this type of an operation? Is it a smaller land to building ratio than usual?
Yes, I will agree that this is a smaller land to building ratio than usual for industrial properties. Although I will mention that in the St. James area, due to the congestion in there and all the retail and commercial and the airport, every property in there, other industrial not, has low land to building ratio. So it is typical for the area, but it is atypical for industrial properties.
And just one more follow-up question with respect to that land to building ratio. If you look at page 4 of your presentation, Mr. Labenstein, there's the first photograph there.
Yeah.
You had mentioned that you can see the cars parked there at the back of the loading dock area.
Yep.
So it's not a typical operation too. So it's effective when trucks come in, you have to move your cars. There's some. Would you agree with that? I mean, when you look at the parking situation.
Sure. I mean, the only thing I will comment on that is, well, there's 2 things here. One, it's not very typical for properties to have rear access with a back lane. So I would say that is a positive for this property. But with industrial properties and zoning and everything, industrial property can be used for just about any type of operation. So in this situation, it doesn't look like they need to use the overhead doors. So they're parking there instead. But yes, if a truck comes in, they would have to move their cars.
Those are all the questions I have, Mr. Chairman. Thanks.
Okay, questions, Ms. Delaro?
I have no questions, thank you.
Ms. Duncan?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, I have no questions. So, Mr. McCubbin, your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Righty. 49 Madison, realty roll number 07-001122-500. File number is 24-1860. Current assessed value, as you've heard, is $857,000, and we're asking for a reduction to $761,000. If I can get you to turn your attention to page 6 of my presentation, you'll see a bird's eye view of the property in the first photograph, and the front of the property on the bottom. Street view on the bottom, sorry. Second photograph shows it's on page 7. The second sort of frame there shows its relative location with respect to the area. The highest and best use is, of course, it exists in its current use. Just wanted to back up here. Let's get back to page 8, please, Mr. Chairman. The subject is improved an older office type / warehouse and is located at 489 Madison, south of St. Matthews Avenue. The improvements were constructed in 1962, as you've heard, and have a wall height of only 15 feet, so obsolete by modern industrial standards. The land area is 14,593 square feet with a land to building ratio of 1.9 to 1. Also obsolete by today's industrial standards. As shown on the aerial photograph above, there's limited parking on site, a very limited loading capacity, and the property is zoned M1 light industrial. Getting to page 12 of my presentation, Mr. Chairman. We accept the city's calculation regarding net operating income. Adjustments will be made to the capitalization rate and removal of half of the assessed value of roll number 07-569-137740. The current assessed value of the roll number associated with this property is 150,000. So that 150,000 is the value for roll number 0756913770.
Can you show us where that property is?
I can. If I can't in this presentation, I would be able to do in the other presentation. Okay. Just bear with me, Mr. Chairman, please. So if you look at page 7 of my presentation, Mr. Chairman, the subject property, and it's barely visible. There's a red mark kind of in the center of the building, in the middle of the photograph. The property that I'm referencing, the vacant land, is just to the north of that. You see some cars parked along St. Matthews. That's a piece of land there that's worth 150,000. And what's happening here is the owner of the parcel immediately south of that parking area is the same owner as the property that we're dealing here with today. So in terms of parking, what we're doing is removing half of that value as associated with this property, the subject property, for the income approach to up the land to building ratio to a reasonable amount. So getting back to the income approach. So there's some discussion with respect to capitalization rate. Nevertheless, our capitalization rate that we're applying in this case is 6% in our reconciliation of final value. So accepting the net operating income of 50,159 and applying a capitalization rate of 6%, we arrive at a value of $836,000. And subsequent removal of half of the land value, as I've discussed, that vacant parcel is 150,000 currently assessed at. So removing that from this parcel, we arrive at a market value of 761. It atones for the lack of parking and everything else to do with this property to bring it up to a reasonable land to building ratio. And that is my presentation. Again, I will rely on the INE if we have any questions from the assessor for some reason.
Okay, Mr. Lobenstein, questions?
I just one. I wasn't too sure. Did you mention that? So the owner owns that vacant lot as well? Who owns this building? Okay.
Yes, they own the vacant lot, and the same owner. If you go back to page 7 of my presentation, the owner, it's the same owner for the building that's abutting the vacant land also.
Okay, those are all my questions.
Okay, Ms. Duncan, questions?
I'm sorry, I don't see the vacant land in the picture. Maybe your picture 6 can show, because or 7, I don't see the vacant land you're referring to.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, you wouldn't see it on page 6. You will see it on page 7 and the top photograph. And if you look at the top photograph, you can see Madison comes right up to and intersects St. Matthews Avenue. So at that intersection in the, if we're looking at an orientation of top being north, it would be in the southeast corner of that intersection.
Okay,
right at the top.
I do see that now, but is that not a different title? Is that not a total separate property regardless of ownership?
Yes, it is. It has its own roll number, yes, but it's the same ownership. Yes.
Okay, thank you. No other questions.
Okay, Ms. Delaro.
I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so I guess the heart of your argument is you're saying that vacant lot is required for parking for this, to make this property an economic unit. Is that am I paraphrasing that right?
Essentially, yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, but there is parking for, well, perhaps 10 alongside uh this property and, well, another 6, it looks like, behind the property. Is more parking required for this particular property?
Not on a constant basis, Mr. Chairman, but there is a requirement uh, from time to time with respect to this property. So the owner of this property and the tenants also can use the parking in the front. They're allowed to use that, as far as I'm
Okay.
concerned.
All right. Thank you for that then. We will then move on to the next door property, I guess, 499 Madison. And again, we'll have to deal with the issue of late applicant evidence, but so Mr. Lobenstein, if you can read in the basic information.
Sure. The roll number is 07001118500499 Madison Street, and we've assessed value of $793,000.
Okay, and the evidence, once again, was late. Does the city have any objection to receiving the late evidence?
We have no objection.
Okay, Mr. McCubbin, I take it was the same reason as the previous property?
Yes, I'm going from memory now. It's coming back to Mr. Chairman. I didn't even have, I don't believe I had email access at the time either. And I think I made a phone call or something or after the fact. So I was having, yeah, it's the same situation with respect to this property and submission.
Okay, any questions from the panel on this?
I have no questions. Thank you.
No questions, thank you.
Okay, I guess we have to go back in camera and make a decision whether to receive the evidence. So we'll take a brief break for the panel to confer. Okay, thank you. Welcome back. And once again, we will accept the late evidence. And that will apply to every other property if we happen to hear where there was late evidence. So Mr. Lobenstein, you can proceed.
Sure. For 499 Madison Street, again, we have an assessed value of $793,000. Moving down to the property descriptions on page 1. There's one building, 2 premises. We have an effective year built of 1956. We have a wall height of 12. Construction class is wood or steel framed exterior walls. We have M1 zoning for light manufacturing. We have a land area of 6,941 square feet with a leasable area of 5,550 square feet for a land to plan ratio of 1.25. Moving down to my page 3, again, this is right next door to the property that we just looked at. So it's on Madison in the St. James area. You can see it on page 3. It's abutting 495 Madison. And then as we were speaking about before, you can see the that vacant parking lot that we talked about beside it to the left on the bottom of my page 3. Again, there's a few more pictures on page 4. It's a very similar type of property that we just spoke about. And then there's some street views on page 5. You can see from the perspective of the front of the building and from where that vacant lot is as well. Moving down to my page 7, you can see my comparables. They are actually the same comparables that we used for the last property. Seeing as the properties are exactly the same. So most of them are in the same area except for 220 Cree. And similar ages, and you can see the net rents that support the model value on the far right. So moving down to my page 8, you can see my income workup. Again, we've broken up this building into 2 premises. So the first one's 3,441 square feet. The second one's 2,109 square feet for the total leasable area, 551 square feet. And we get a potential rent of $44,742. In this situation, we've only applied the model vacancy of 4.5%. This building doesn't seem to have chronic vacancy issues like the past one. We have an effective gross income of $42,729. Expenses of 3% and a shortfall of $4. And this generates our net operating income of $40,448. We have an overall capitalization rate of 5.1%. We apply that to our net operating income and we get our assessed value of $793,000 rounded. So moving down, you can see the capitalization chart, industrial second from the top at 5.1. This falls out of the 20th to the 80th percentile, mostly due to its size being a smaller building at only 5,500 square feet. It doesn't carry as much risk. As I spoke to before, there's many different types of businesses that can use this type of property, so it doesn't pose as risky of a property if you're talking about an 80,000 square foot industrial property or 50,000 square foot industrial property. Excuse me. That being said, there is a mailer on page 12. They are stating a gross income type. So this doesn't have recoveries, it's gross income. They show the expenses as well. And on the far right-hand column, they're showing that they don't have any vacancy issues for this property. Actually, they seem to be, yeah, okay. And then on page 15, you can see the tenant that's actually using both spaces. They're using the whole area, it looks like. So we feel the value of $793,000 is fair and equitable and should be confirmed. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. McCubbin? You're muted again.
Righty. Mr. Chairman, sorry, Mr. Levinson, if I can get you to turn your attention to page 4 of your presentation, please.
Yep.
The top photograph, you mentioned that would you agree that that vacant parcel is associated with the subject property?
Yep, I would agree.
Yeah.
Yep.
Those are the only questions I have, Mr. Chairman. That's the only question I have.
Okay, Ms. Delaro.
Just with respect to your cap rate of 5.10 on this one, and your previous, the previous properties 5.85%, yet you use the same comparables and the sort of same reasoning for the properties. Like, can you just kind of explain the difference in the cap rates there?
Yeah, so we're going to be looking at size. Size is an issue. So the previous property was a bit larger, about 2,000 square feet larger, coming in over 7,000 square feet. This one's coming in at 5,550 square feet. So the model generated a lower capitalization rate for this one, mostly due to its size at 5.10. In terms of the rent comparables, we use the same because of how the premises are broken up. They're very similar in size. That's how the model generated the net rents. So we use the same comparables.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay, Ms. Duncan.
I guess just in that same regard, then does a smaller size based on potential for, if you lose a lease, is that not make it more risk as opposed to?
Sure, yeah, but I mean losing a lease for any building is risky, whether it's 80,000 square feet or 5,000 square feet. There is always that potential there, which is why we do put in a vacancy loss for these properties, even when they are fully occupied or owner occupied. And then we will, if there is chronic vacancy, as we saw before, we will investigate that. And if we feel it should be, we will increase the vacancy. So, I mean, yes, there is a potential risk of losing a leased space, but I would say for a smaller property, it's slightly less risky because a smaller property has more types of businesses that can use it compared to a larger property. You're very selective when you're looking at 100,000 square foot manufacturing property and who can take that over compared to a premise that's only 2,000 square feet.
Okay, thank you. No other questions.
Okay, looking at the mailer, there's one occupant who seems to be leasing almost the entire building. Then why is this divided into two different premises?
Sure. That's the way the building in our system we have it. So at one point it was probably divided up into two separate premises. There could still be a dividing wall between there. They're just using both premises. I haven't inspected it, so I'm not 100% sure. But this is how we've established the model with having two separate premises.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. McCubbin. You can begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Property we're dealing with is 499 Madison Street. Realty roll number 07-0011118500. File number is 24-1864. Current assessed value is 793,000, as you've heard, and we are asking for it to be reduced to 660,000. Again, going to page 6 of my report, you can see the subject property, discuss where the location is, the assessor has. And let's say page 7, you've seen that photograph before, and those photographs, highest and best use, of course, as it exists in its current use. Just going back to the property land and improvement description on page 8. The subject is improvement in an older office warehouse, and it's located at 499 Madison. The improvement was constructed in 1954 and have a wall height of only 12 feet, obsolete by modern industrial standards. The reported leasable area is 5,200 square feet. The land area is 6,941 square feet, with a land to building ratio, as you've heard, of only 1.25 to 1, also obsolete by today's industrial standards. As shown on the aerial photograph above, there is no parking or loading on site. And half of the separately assessed parking lot to the north is used by the tenants of this property. The property is zoned M1. With respect to valuation, if you can go to page 12 of my report, please. Income approach. We accept the city's calculation regarding net operating income. Adjustments will be made to the capitalization rate and the removal of half of the value of the roll number associated with this property. So half of that, as I've stated before in previous properties, that vacant land is worth 150,000, or it's assessed at 150,000 currently. So we're considering a capitalization rate of 5.5 in our reconciliation of value using the NOI as presented. There are a number of issues with this property. Two, as you've heard, I'm not going to go over it, with respect to parking. With respect to the two tenancies, I suspect in previous, I guess the way it was set up for business assessment purposes, there were two different tenancies in there, and you never amalgamated them, and it can go back to two tenancies, so it's probably left with it's just left it as it is right now, which is fine. So with respect to the value of this property, the net operating income we're accepting is $40,488, applying the capitalization rate of 5.5%. We arrive at a value of $735,000, and the land adjustment for this property is also $75,000, so negative $75,000. We arrive at a market value of $660,000. And there, pretty straightforward. There's some more photographs again on page 20, some more clear photographs. So the April 1st, 2023 market value of the subject property for assessment purposes is therefore $660,000 rounded, and I'm open to questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, questions, Mr. Lovenstein?
I have no questions, no.
Okay, Ms. Duncan?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm understanding this correctly. Is that parking area, that land that we're discussing with the value of 150 stated, is that a separate title? Is it a separate roll number? I guess, yeah. Is that a separate roll number, separate title?
Mr. Chairman, if I can answer that, for sure, it is a separate roll number. It has its own separate roll number that if you look at page 20, you can see well, we've seen the parking lot there. Yeah, it has its own separate roll number. With respect to separate title, I'm not sure. I didn't investigate that, but it's owned by the property, the owner of the property next door.
And how do we know the value is 150 on it?
I've looked at the value, and Mr. Lovenstein can probably concur with respect to that value. It's factual.
It's the assessed value. We've put the assessed value on that property at $150,000.
So there's actually 3 properties there, the 2 in question, and then the third one's utilized for parking for both, is what I'm hearing. And we don't know who owns that vacant land?
No, we do. It's the same owner as the subject property.
Okay, so all 3 properties are owned by the same person?
That's correct. But the parking lot is not in contention today. We're just discussing it for income approach purposes. I'm just referencing it, but it's not on the docket today.
Right. It's just, you've done land adjustments for it, so that's why
Yes.
I was kind of confused. I thought it might have belonged to the one property, but now I hear you say it's 3 separate properties. Okay, no other questions. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Delaro, any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and I have no questions, so thank you for that. We'll move on to 1578, Aaron. And let me close these files because it's looking a little busy up there. Okay, 1578 Aaron Street.
The roll number is 13010504200, 1578 Aaron Street. We have a split class assessed value, so we have $367 applied to the 40 institutional property, which makes it school tax exempt. And then the other portion of the property we have at $553,000, and we have that as taxable for a total assessed value of $920,000. So I do have a recommendation, a verbal recommendation. I'm recommending an overall value of $829,000, 829,000. And in terms of the portioning for that, for the 40 institutional part of it, it would be $299,000. And then for the 60 T, the taxable part of it, it would be $530,000. And that would get you to your $829,000 for my verbal recommendation.
Okay, and Mr. McCubbin, how do you feel about this?
Mr. Chairman, we accept that recommendation with the final say being with the client, but we
Okay.
accept this recommendation.
All right, Ms. Delaro, any questions on this?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Duncan.
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, so Then we'll go to 1500 Valor Road. So on 1500 Valor Road, Mr. Lobenstein.
The roll number is 13003640100, 1500 Ballard Road. We have assessed value of $955,000. That's 955000. And I have a verbal recommendation of $860,000. So 860000.
Okay, again, that's on reduced rent.
That's on reduced rents, yes.
Okay, Mr. McCubbin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do accept that recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Ms. Duncan, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Deloro?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Staying in the West End, 1346 Clifton. Okay, on Clifton, Mr. Lobenstein.
Sure. The roll number is 13010534500, 1346 Clifton Street. We have an assessed value of $974,000. I do have a verbal recommendation of $877,000. That's 877000, and that is adjusting the rental rate.
Okay, Mr. McCubbin.
We do accept that recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, questions, Ms. Deloro?
No questions. Thank you.
Ms. Duncan?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, our last property, Adelaide. We're moving down to the warehouse district. 128 Adelaide. Okay, you can begin, Mr. Lobenstein.
We have a roll number of 13061025100, 128 Adelaide Street. We have an assessed value of $982,000, and I have a verbal recommendation of $884,000, and that would be adjusting the net rent. So that's 884000.
Okay, Mr. McCubbin.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. We do accept that recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Duncan, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Deloro?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, gentlemen. We have now heard all the properties on today's agenda, and this hearing is now adjourned. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may interrupt you.
Sure.
Sorry, I just need some clarification on something here.
Okay.
Are we missing a property here, Mr. Chairman, in the docket?
Not that I know of. Did I skip one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No, we've heard all 12.
Have we heard 601 Washington?
601 Washington. Yes. Verbal
Okay, yeah, that
recommendation,
was,
856,000. Yep.
Yeah, sorry. Yep, I'm just a little confused. Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. It's been a long haul for everybody, and thank you again. Thank you for your presentation, and thank Ms. Harland. I mean, it makes our job easier and makes us look good.
Thank
You're
you.
very welcome.
Thank you all.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. This hearing
Have a
is
good
now
day.
adjourned. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may we take a 10-minute break, please?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, I'll go take us offline and I'll let you know when we're off.
Okay, thanks.